UIC.
Freedom the people of
Hell yeah.
Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah,
Yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Ready for broke every chain. That when you free up the people, levitate.
Good night, everyone. Welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. Let me know if you guys are hearing me. I was having some technical difficulties earlier. So just let me know in the chat if you guys are hearing me loud and clear. I hope you are. JMH, always on point, man. Good to have you on. Olive Johnson, good night, Olive. How are you guys doing? While you're letting me know if you can hear me, all right, loud and clear. Roll up gang, game plays getting. Long name. Yes, hearing you, Max Velocity. Amarna Wellness hearing. Big up everyone that's on the live right now. I just want to say thanks for coming on. I forgot what I was going to say a while ago, but yeah, so welcome to tonight's show. Tonight is going to be a learning, because you know, Lydia always says class is in session. Tonight is going to be a learning night. We'll have an interview with Vegas. So Mr. Vegas actually interviewed Mr. Patterson some time ago, and we're going to replay that interview here. And what I like about it is that Mr. Vegas is going through the manifesto. So going through the UIC's manifesto and asking questions, you know, based on each point in the manifesto. So it's really great. It's a long interview, so I won't be playing all of it. But I'll be playing about an hour and 15 minutes of the interview. Keith Campbell, welcome. Purpose-driven vibes, bless up yourself. Marshall E. McCullough, loud and clear. JJ, I'm hearing loud and clear from UK. Oh, thank you. Where are you guys listening in from? Drop in the chat. Max Velocity says, vote UIC for a better Jamaica. Absolutely. Kirk, good night, Kirk. Jacinth Virgo, blessed evening to you all. Maisie Miller, you're always welcome. All right, guys, so drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. Some people are tuning in from the UK, some are from the US, some are actually here in Jamaica. So it'd be good to see, you know, who we have here. All right, so Florida, sewing and gacha life videos. That's interesting. That's a YouTube channel. Interesting. Max Velocity is tuning in from New Orleans, or Louisiana. Ming Hutchinson, bless up yourself. Power to the people. Victory and peace. ATL. All right, so we have ATL in the house. Liddy, classes in session, of course. A pleasant good evening. Keith Campbell from the USA. Olive Johnson from Jamaica. Michael O'Connor, listening from the USA. Patricia Brooks, New York in the house. Jacinth Virgo is in New York as well. All right, so glad to have you guys. Oh, Kirk, Alberta, Canada. Glad to have you guys on. Tonight, as I said, is going to be a replay of a very, very topical and very important interview that Mr. Vegas had with Mr. Patterson some time ago. So please, guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Like, because you know, the more you like, the more people are going to be going to see the live. Share, of course. The more people you share to, the more people are going to know about the UIC, and of course, subscribe so you always know when we're on our lives. So September 22 is going to be a very big day for us. I don't know if you guys have heard, but we're planning a walk for good governance now. That's going to be on September 22nd. That's next week, Thursday. And we start downtown. We're starting at the World Theater in downtown. And then doing several stops along the way. So we're stopping at Hero Circle. And then we're stopping at Emancipation Park. And then we're going to end in Halfway Tree, Mandela Park. So please, if you can, if you're in Jamaica and can make it, please make it. Come and support, show your support for good governance. We're no longer asking our government to provide good governance because it's clear that they can't, right? We are now saying, we are demanding good governance, and we're now saying that we, the people, are looking for someone to step in and provide that good governance. Clearly, we have no faith in the two political parties, and no faith in the government as it is right now in providing good governance. And we all see what's happening in the space in Jamaica. Lots of things are happening. Bad roads, people are demonstrating. So just today, a couple of taxi and bus operators pulled their services from, I think, Stony Hill and all other places as well, in demonstration of high cost of tickets, and also the bad roads. Also as well, people in St. Thomas are still continuing to block roads and demonstrate for the bad roads. So we're seeing all around us what's happening. Students not being let into school because they are supposedly not wearing their uniform properly. And so there's a lot happening right now in Jamaica. And if you're not careful, you'll be swayed by all that's happening. You'll kind of be distracted by all what's happening. And we need to stay focused right now and demand good governance from our government. So, as I said, I have an interview with Mr. Vegas and Mr. Patterson. It was done on, what's the name of the program? Unstoppable TV. And so I'm going to be sharing that with you guys, and then coming back and putting things in context for you, answering any questions if you have any questions. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So let me pull this up right now. All right. Here we go.
Mr. Vegas, welcome, brother.
Yeah, brother. How are you?
Good. It's always good family, and especially when time you all are reasoning.
Of course.
Happy to have you here. And also, Mr. Patterson, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. All right, so I'm just going to be on the sidelines, listening in, and also just moderating things to make sure that it flows nicely. Mr. Vegas and yourself will be having the conversation mainly. So I'm going to just step aside right now and give Mr. Vegas the floor.
Again, thanks for having me on the program. It's a pleasure speaking with Mr. Patterson. I must apologize. I must apologize for.
Go ahead. Sorry, Vegas.
Yeah, I must apologize to Mr. Patterson and his staff for what happened the last time. It was my bad. I missed the call from his representative. And of such, we did not have the discourse we wanted to have. But of course, I think I gave him enough time to address his manifesto if he had desired to do so. So that is what I really want to speak to him or get a better understanding of his manifesto. Because I think change is necessary. And I would like for someone to challenge the two-party that we have in Jamaica for so many years that we have grown accustomed to and have gotten so comfortable with just having these two parties, where I think someone, must step in and create some amount of, challenge to the representative of these parties, based on the fact that they may have been taking the Jamaican people for granted, and this what I'm doing here is from Mr. Patterson to be successful in doing so. So when you get among the big boys, someone will already ruffle your feathers, per se. So that is what this is about for me.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that, and I think it's good for a good, healthy governance system for us to have the freedom to have these kind of conversations. There are some countries where you can't ask these kinds of questions. You have to be fearful of what you say about political leaders. We've also seen in Jamaica where there have been cases where persons have spoken up and they have been roughed up by the authorities and so on. But we want a Jamaica where people are free to speak. And so I welcome the opportunity to hear your questions, to answer them to the best of my ability, and even question some of your assumptions, because you might make assumptions in your position, and I have to clarify that for listeners or viewers. I'm looking forward to a healthy conversation where you dive into our manifesto and help the world to understand it.
With that said, what I'm more concerned about with the manifesto, I'm afraid that in reading the manifesto, I'm afraid that I'm looking at what Jamaica is going to be like, or what's going to happen with Jamaica if a UIC government should take over and you are able to implement all of these changes that you're hoping to make in your governance. I'm a bit afraid of we're looking at a Haiti type of situation where a lot of sanctions are placed on that country based on the laws that they have implemented over the years and the outside presence that have challenged those laws. So I'm interested in that side of it. And how are you going to accomplish these things without getting the sanctions and so forth?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I mean, it's good for us to understand the history of Haiti and the sanctions that it faced with. And I think your concern in terms of, if you're saying that our policies are contrary to international norms, Haiti didn't do anything wrong. Haiti is not deserving of any punishment. Our people in Haiti were very successful in repelling the French and establishing themselves as the first republic in the Caribbean. Unfortunately for the Haitian people, their leaders were not fully aware of how to set up a republic properly. And at the same time, they were sanctioned for having successfully secured their freedom. So we don't want to say that one should not seek their freedom because it may come with sanctions. It's very important that we do seek our freedom, our proper freedom, true freedom, and that we learn to effectively deal with any sanctions that come. Now, one of my favorite countries to look at is Singapore, and Singapore was very skillful in transitioning from a third world country to what we call a first world country. You might recall in 1965, they were similarly depressed in terms of their economic numbers, with this similar GDP position, GDP per capita position. But their leader, Lee Kuan Yew, was very diplomatic, very good at negotiating with the colonial powers. And so while they were in the midst of what we know as the Cold War then, where you had, the USSR versus the great United States of America, and people had to kind of pick sides. You might recall the Jamaican government then kind of joined the non-alliance pact and found themselves sort of identifying with communism to some degree, and as a result suffered significant sanctions for having not played the geopolitics correctly. Now we can learn from that. We can learn from how Jamaica back in the 60s, 70s navigated the geopolitics, and how Singapore in the same period navigated the geopolitics. And what Singapore did, which Jamaica should have done, was to make sure that they don't choose any side and don't appear to be choosing any side, but rather deal with the different factions, the different geopolitical factions effectively. In today's day, that will be China and the US. And what you want is a leader that understands geopolitics, understand economics, and is firmly on the side of protecting the rights and freedoms of the Jamaican people. You don't want what we have today, which are politicians who make decisions based on who offers them the most money, whether it be in grants or loans or some combination thereof. As president of the new Jamaica, I'll be leading in a way that protects the interests not of Jamaica in general, but of all Jamaicans, because I understand the importance of respecting the sovereignty of each Jamaican. And if you do that, you can then protect the entire collective effectively. I've also had a lot of experience working internationally. I've been to Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, other Caribbean islands, and I get an understanding through my travels as an independent citizen, by the way, so I wasn't representing the government or anything like that. So I had a chance to freely mingle and interact with the people of those countries, analyze their political systems and processes, and also the way they think and work. And I'll be applying all of those skills, including my time in the government of Canada, to bring good diplomatic solutions to avoiding sanctions where we can and dealing with others appropriately if we are sanctioned.
Based on what you're saying, I think it is a little bit more than that in terms of when I'm speaking on sanctions, and I understand the Haiti situation. But I don't think it's just about Haiti fought for their freedom and stuff like that. I think we have to look at the Monroe Doctrine and all those areas. Like, for example, if I look at your manifesto at 24 and national defense, we support the maintenance of a sufficient military to defend our country against aggression. We should both avoid entangling alliances and oppose any attempt by any country to act as a policeman for the world. We oppose any form of compulsory national service. So I'm trying to understand what is the message you're sending here, and do you think Jamaica has the military, economic and political will to go up against the Monroe Doctrine in terms of its position on the geopolitical issues?
Well, we're not trying to go up against the Monroe Doctrine or any such thing. What we're saying is that Jamaica as a people must be prepared to defend themselves, and we must prepare ourselves to be a strong country in terms of not just sitting back and saying we're going to rely on any other country to defend us. Of course, we're going to have to recognize the fact that we're not a superpower, we're not a military power, but we can become a formidable force right here in the Caribbean, not as an agent of trouble for, let's say, the US or any other country, but rather focused on protecting the interests of the Jamaican people. Once again, I have to draw on the skills of the one of my favorite persons, Lee Kuan Yew. You know, Singapore is the size of St. Thomas, but they have a massive army, you know, in terms of military technology, and they're able to defend themselves quite well. Of course, maybe even long enough until they can get additional support from, you know, other countries interested in freedom. And so I'm just saying the Jamaican government under UIC will recognize and plan for and develop our capacity to defend ourselves as a nation. So, you know, what is written there could be taken out of context, or it could be used as a springboard for any kind of intervention by an outside force. But it'll be very hard pressed to do that based on the moral authority on which our manifesto stands, which is very much in line with the founding fathers of the US and the constitution that they tried to create, which was one that's based on countries having their sovereignties, individual having their sovereignties, and a world where freedom, as opposed to totalitarianism or dictatorship, is embraced.
So primarily, are you saying Jamaica will be a non-aligned state based on not taking any sides?
Jamaica
geopolitical spheres.
Yeah, Jamaica
wouldn't that be detrimental to the economy? And I understand that you're trying to model Jamaica off the whole Singapore, way at which they achieve what you're saying. But was it without the help of the Occidental?
No, well, first of all, I'm not modeling Jamaica after Singapore. What I've done is to look at countries around the world and picked things that are pragmatically sensible for Jamaica. So, for example, you see a small European country like the Netherlands being the second largest exporter of food. And you say, my God, if they can do that, why can't Jamaica? And the more I look at their system and see how they have done it, I say, whoa, we can do this here. We have everything and more than what they have. And they're the second largest producer of agricultural outputs at 95 billion a year. So here it is. Singapore has done some things very, very well, and we can, copy what they have done and use that. Now, in terms of the being non-aligned or aligned, I prefer to make sure that Jamaica remains flexible and build relationships with countries as opposed to talking about being aligned. I want us to be able to talk comfortably with China, talk comfortably with the US, talk comfortably with Russia, and make sure that whatever agreements we enter, whatever reciprocal trade agreements we design, that it's done in the context of what you see there in our manifesto, to protect the interest of the Jamaican people and never violating the sovereignty of a single Jamaican.
You spoke of Netherlands and their labor market, yeah, and how they were able to achieve, what you just spoke about. But if I look at 19 on your manifesto, the labor market section, employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees are outside the scope of the government, and these contracts should not be encumbered by government-mandated benefits or social engineering. We support the right of private employers and employees to choose whether or not to bargain with each other through a labor union. Bargaining should be free of government interference, such as compulsory arbitration or imposing any obligation to bargain. So wouldn't this be private employees taking advantage of the marketplace? And how are we going to be able to accomplish what you just spoke on, per se, the Netherlands and so forth? How are you going to accomplish this if we have private business controlling the price, controlling the marketplace,
right? So
price, if the government cannot interfere with this?
Well, first of all, when we talk about private and we talk about market, you need to understand that you're talking about citizens. So when we talk about the market and private enterprise, you're talking about individuals being able to make their own choices. We are the private sector, every single citizen. What we don't want is what we currently have, which is you give politicians the power to manipulate the market in favor of big business in the name of helping the poor. So they tell us that their goal is to help the poor, and they tell us that the regulations they're putting in place is going to do just that, when in fact what it does is to suppress small businesses and micro businesses and give big business the upper hand. You make the environment very cumbersome, you make the compliance requirements very difficult, and the ultimate outcome of all of that is more people underemployed or unemployed or underpaid and so on. I'll give you another example, again from Singapore. Singapore does not have a minimum wage law, and Singapore does not interfere with the employment process in the way that we have now guarded against. And what is the end result of that? The end result is a massively highly educated, very competent, and highly paid citizenry, to the point where Singapore has to now import labor to do its menial jobs. So any job which would consider menial, Singapore has to be importing people to do that, because their citizens have now risen to a tremendously high level in terms of their salaries. So you have very high salaries in Singapore, very high competencies, very high production, and it goes against the grain of what you're insinuating. You're thinking that the way for us to bring up employment and bring up wages and bring fairness to the marketplace is to have human beings, politicians like ourselves, having the power to meddle with the arrangements that citizens may make with other citizens, because these are citizens. If I own a business, I own B Suite Jamaica, and I am employing someone, I say, I would like to employ you. Here's what I'm offering. Would you like to take the job? And the person says yes or no, they want to take the job. That's not business controlling prices. That is people deciding on prices. That is me, the buyer, and you, the seller, deciding if we're going to agree on a particular price. And as a result of that, you now have the market doing what it should do. It indicates to you and me what we should invest our time and energy in. So for example, if you see that Kalalua sell really hot because the price of Kalalua is up, and you're seeing the indications of what that's telling the market, you decide to switch from potatoes to planting Kalalua, because price is simply a communication. Price is nothing more than a communication. For example, right now Jamaicans are suffering from inflation, even though we have a government that has full control of the economy and is able to meddle with any aspect of it. Why then do we have high inflation and high prices? Because we don't have the market being able to set the price of goods and services, and we don't have the market being able to adjust inflation, and we don't have the market being able to adjust interest rate. We have a central bank with the power to do that, and we have a government that can oversupply liquidity in the market and cause the inflations which we're now seeing. So we have to be careful that we don't ask for something that might be even more disastrous than the one that we've been taught to be disastrous.
But I hear what you're saying, but what I'm really asking though, based on employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees outside the scope of the government. So if that is the case, and based on what you're saying about the workers and Singapore and so forth, wouldn't the private employees take advantage of the people that they're employing? If the government, if it is outside of the scope of the government, and you're saying if a man is offering a man that for a job, yeah, it is between those two persons or those two entities or subjects. I'm saying to you, wouldn't the how do we protect the workers? How do we protect the workers if the private employers, excuse me, are taking advantage of your mandate?
Sorry, just a second. 1 second.
Welcome to everybody who is tuning in right now. We have Mr. Viegas as well as the UIC president, Mr. Joseph L. Patterson, with us in a conversation. Now, listen, like I said earlier, this conversation is very, very much important to every Jamaican to know what a manifesto is and what a manifesto is all about. And this right here, what Mr. Vegas is doing is awesome, because he's breaking down step by step, each thing in the UIC's manifesto and giving Mr. Patterson the opportunity to give us a better understanding of what could happen or what will happen, based on the UIC's manifesto. All right. So I want everybody here, and I must say thank you so much to everybody who is here, who is keeping respectful in the comment section and not being disrespectful and not being childish. Thank you so much for that. And to everyone that has already shared out the program, thank you so much. All right, Mr. P, you ready?
Yes.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I hear that there's some problems on the other feed that's going through to our followers over there. So sorry, I have no control over it. But back to the question of Mr. Vegas. So there are some assumptions that are being made, and the assumption is that employers can take advantage of employees
Right.
if the employees are allowed to make their own decisions. So the assumption is that employees
And the employers as well. Like, we're not just talking about the employees, we're talking about the employers, because based on what is written here in the manifesto, it's basically saying employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees are outside the scope of the government, and these contracts should not be encumbered by government mandated benefits of social engineering. So,
right.
I just want to understand there, wouldn't this be an opportunity for private employers to take advantage of the workers?
No, it isn't. It would be an opportunity for employers and employees not to be manipulated by politicians. So the opportunity is to get rid of the politicians from manipulating either side. And normally the manipulation is to support big business against small business. So what you are afraid of, what they've taught us in school and what they've taught us through the news media, is that you must be afraid to negotiate your own price, not having somebody else out there, a third party, without any responsibility either to pay you or to find the money to pay you or to deal with your personal responsibilities, a third party who is now going to influence that relationship, and it's supposed to turn out to be in your favor. But no, in a true market economy where you do not have big business being able to pay politicians to make regulations to suit them, what you have is supply and demand. Each and every member of society is free to choose who they're going to work for and how much they're going to work for. Now, in a low skilled job, a job which is very low skilled, which you can easily find people to work in because it's such a low skilled job, the price of that job is going to be very low naturally because almost anybody can do it. As you go up the ladder in terms of complexity, you now have a lot of price differential, which is now going to come down to how competent a person is, how much in demand is that particular position, and how valuable that person is to the company in question. And now you're going to have price differentiation. The more you have government getting involved, the more now you start to have built-in inefficiencies. Persons are able to lock themselves into jobs even though they're not performing very well, and employers are in a position to use the regulations, for example, to stifle some markets, so they control the best people but have a lower price for that market because of the government manipulations. We're getting rid of all of that and opening the market fully so that a contract is a contract. You can freely engage in designing a contract with your employer based on what you want, and vice versa. Now, what you're afraid of is the fact that you think that the employer is so big, the employer is so big that you're going to be able to have unfair positions. But no, you're assuming that the person has no other alternative. And you're assuming that there wouldn't be other competitors who want those good employees. So once you have now a market where this one employer wants to be the big bad bully, he now faces a competitor who understands the market better and is able to better compensate and entice the best in the market. And that now pulls those employees over there. And that now creates the kind of outcome which we want, which is a high value environment for employees, a merit-based system where people are progressing because of how good they are, not because of either regulations favoring them or politicians manipulating a market for them, because somebody behind the scene who fund your campaign is able to drive those regulations to get those market conditions. So we understand this very fully, and that is why we're designing it this way, to have a truly transparent and open market. If now somebody tries to abuse the contract relationship, that goes to court and you have resolutions very quickly, because in our system, no matter how rich or poor you are, let me say it the other way, no matter how poor you are, you will have full access to the courts because it's not based on how much money you have, it's based on a public service in the judicial process.
So does that mean you'll be getting rid of the labor union?
No, no. If you read it carefully,
What will the labor what will be the duty of the labor union?
no,
If we have-
we're not defining the duty of the labor union. We're allowing you, the citizens, to decide if you want a labor union and what you want that labor union to do on your behalf. So you're free. Employees are free to choose their unions. They're free to design their unions the way they want it, but it won't be in legislation. The government won't be saying this is what labor unions should do or shouldn't do. As long as the labor union does not use force or fraud, it is free to, with the permission of their members, to do what needs to be done to influence the outcomes of the negotiations.
So let's say the employer, a company, is paying below the minimum wage. What should be done in that regard?
Well, in a UIC world, there will be no minimum wage because the minimum wage is a very dangerous and counterproductive tool. It is used to get votes. It sounds good on paper. It entices people to vote for politicians who, like we're seeing now, come out and say 12,000. A minimum wage simply serves to set an artificial price. And when you have artificial price, there are unintended consequences. One of those unintended consequences is a mass amount of youth unemployment, which then becomes permanent unemployment. Why is that so? A person will not be able to get more in a marketplace than his productive capacity. So if you set an artificial price, all it does is make it illegal to hire him at any other price below that. It then robs him of the one tool he has, which is to say, I am willing to work for less in order to get it. Where people have a problem with minimum wage, that they think a minimum wage should pay a person who is, let's say, 40 years old and have 3 kids. Nobody 40 years old who have 3 kids should be expecting to live off a Burger King salary. So we have a problem there. We have created a situation where we're allowing adults to think that a job that should be for a teenager who is at home with his parents, going to school, and want to work part-time to have money to take out his girlfriend, buy a few things that they want, maybe even save some money to invest in his own education. And suddenly a job like that, which is a burger flipping job, which should be a job for a kid, 17, 18, 19, not an adult, not a mother, not a father, not a parent. And we have gotten people to believe in the silly idea that a job like that should pay enough to take care of a family. That is ridiculous. That only pushes up the price of the burger. And as a result, it changes the dynamics where more and more people who are doing those jobs are at the wrong age and the wrong stage of their lives. And we lock people into low-end, dead-end jobs. We need to change the psychology and start encouraging every citizen to work on earning their maximum potential. And the first way to do that is to give them the proper signal that government is not going to try to arrange things just so that you get a particular salary to feed a family of 3 or 4. But rather, government's job is to give you an empowering environment, an enabling environment, so that you will learn, earn, and grow, so that you're moving through a continuum of earning potentials. So what you earned at 17, which let's say we call that minimum wage now, is not what you're earning at 25. And what you earn at 25 is not what you're earning at 35. Why? Because you should be growing. You should be moving through the process and growing up the ladder of life, as opposed to getting yourself stuck in a situation where you have 3 kids and you're working at Burger King and you're getting whatever they call minimum wage at the time or slightly more than that. And then you're asking the government to step in and change that. Let's teach our people true economics and teach our people how to be as productive and proficient as possible, and let the system work the way it should work as a price signal to tell you where you should target your energy and focus, and then build the people up from there. Not these artificial things being done by government, which, by the way, works powerfully for big business because it allows them to use this artificial price barrier to keep down many people and let them with the focus, the barometer is minimum wage as the measure. And they use that now to suppress wages across the board, which they've done in Jamaica, and keep many people at lower level income because they're not allowing a true market price to take its effect, which would allow those who are most productive to be earning higher and those who are less productive to be motivated to become more productive so that they can earn higher, as opposed to looking to government as the trigger.
Mr. P, let me ask a question, if I may, Vegas.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
What about the company that would then say, you know what, there is no minimum wage,
Right.
so I'm going to underpay someone? You know,
before you answer that, Mr. Patterson, it's a good question. Unstoppable. Are you going to stop the influx of foreigners? Case in point, the Chinese from coming into Jamaica and working.
Let me answer the first question because it's related to the second.
Right, I just want to tie both.
Sure. So the first part of the question is, what would stop a company? Let's say there's no minimum wage. What would stop a company from? Right now in Jamaica, minimum wage is, let's round it off, $7,000. There are different ones for different, sector and industry and all kind of foolishness. But let's say you have $7,000, and that $7,000 can't feed a family. $7,000 is a small amount of money, fit for a person working, a kid, 17, 16 years old, working at a supermarket, packing bags as part of his life journey, and he's getting $7,000. Mommy and daddy paying the light bill, generally speaking, and putting groceries on the table. So that's not going to feed his family, but it is giving him a chance to learn how to be a productive citizen. He's learning how to take directions. He's learning how to work with teams. He's learning how to deal with customers and so on. Great. If that's not there, what would the employer offer him? The employer has to offer him a price that would induce him to leave his video game and the couch to come out and work for them to pack those bags. If the price is too low, when he compares the price versus what he could do with his free time, he'll make a decision on that. So the employer, if he needs him, will have to adjust the price accordingly. Now, let's say there's somebody working for the employer and you think that they're now going to be able to drop the rate below minimum wage. They can drop it all they want. A smarter company will hire that person if they're any good. So he's going to lose his best employees to smart companies who know that, listen, I can't offer 7,000 or whatever for this particular position. I need to go up. And so you're going to have a competitive market. Case in point, right now, even though there's a minimum wage, many Jamaicans earn more than minimum wage because some will never leave their house for that.
I'm going to allow you to answer Mr. Vegas's question, but I just want to stress this, though. I understand what your response was, but my specific question, right?
Yes.
A company is going to want to save more money than pay out more. So if they have employees and there is no minimum wage, now bear in mind, I would think a minimum wage is set to protect employees from being underpaid. So if an employee is being paid and they're not getting what they should get, then they could cry out and say, listen, this is minimum wage, I should be getting that or more. If there is no minimum wage, no laws that the employee could say, all right, then you're going against the law right here and you're paying me like I know I deserve. Wouldn't that be a problem? That's the question I'm asking.
Right. No, it's not a problem. The employee would quit and go to a company who offers them more. You're assuming that there's one company and no other alternatives. Right now in Santa Cruz alone, you have 3 major supermarkets, and then you have some minor ones as well in Santa Cruz. Any one of them that chooses to pay, and right now many of their employees get minimum wage or a little bit more than minimum wage. And the best employees, even in the same category, gets even more than that because the employer wants to keep them. So any employer which goes down, they're going to lose those employees. But remember, we're talking, first of all, in the current environment. The current environment, there are many other factors which are being used to stifle the job market or being used to stifle employees. But in a truly free environment, what you have are many options, and they're popping up every day because you don't have suppression. Right now, small businesses in Jamaica are suppressed. Micro enterprises are suppressed. So because you have suppression, you have less opportunities. The more opportunities you have, the more options employees will have, and the more you'll be able to better negotiate your price. What we have is an artificial system which makes us feel in our minds that we have protection, but in fact, what it is doing is oppressing the Jamaican people. It just sounds good. You have a minimum wage to say this is the minimum and you are protected. You're not protected because the minimum wage is actually zero. They simply don't employ you. And we have a lot of people who are at zero right now. You could set the minimum wage to 12,000 tomorrow. You'll have a lot of people at zero. If we don't fix the full problem, which I have tried to allude to, if you don't fix the full problem and you simply talk about your setting minimum wage, all you're doing is increasing the pool of unemployed, making them permanently unemployed the longer they stay out of the labor market until we get to where we are today with higher and higher crime rates.
So to the question of the foreigners working in the country, how would you address that?
Well, first of all, there should be no favorable treatment given to foreign nationals coming into the country like we're doing now. Right now, the government is giving favorable tax treatment to, and I'm not going to call any particular ethnic group, just generally, they give favorable tax treatment to competitors coming into the space. Yeah.
I understand, Mr. Patterson, and for the interest of time, I think we have a lot to go over, but what I'm asking is, what would you do about foreigners, like the Chinese coming into Jamaica to work?
That's what I'm explaining to you is that we will not be giving them any favorable treatments. Would there be any form of gap? Or Jamaica will have an immigration policy, and so any company that wants to bring in persons into the country has to justify bringing those people into the country. So the government has to look at what is the purpose of somebody coming in from any country, whichever ethnicity or race there might be. And it cannot be that you are getting a chance to come in and compete with Jamaican labor that's available. Take, for example, even in the entertainment industry, you have currently where people are able to bring in entertainers to do what Jamaicans are capable of doing and are ready to do, and they're being given special treatment to come into the country and take over the entertainment space, for example. So these are the kind of things that you do not want to have government politicians being able to play games with the Jamaican people.
So will you put a cap on foreigners and the amount of work they can?
No, it will be a matter of the person who is applying for bringing in persons.
I think you understand where I'm going with this, because based on what you're saying, you're saying if you're going to remove what we were just discussing. So if you're gonna remove that which is already there, would it be like the Chinese or like the Spanish people and whosoever? Wouldn't it be in their interest or the company's interest to bring in those people and they work for less than the minimum wage?
No, they can't. No, you can't bring. Remember, talking about immigration, you're no longer talking about labor relations within the country. You're talking about immigration now. So
would you set a price, a wage gap for foreigners? Or would it still be employees and employers can negotiate their own destiny? That's
we will not be setting any prices.
Right. So if the Chinese or the Spanish decide that they're going to come into the country and work for less, wouldn't that create unemployment?
Yeah, hear me, guys?
Yes.
All right, sorry there, Mr. Patterson. All right, let's do it in a way where we can ask the question and get the answers instead of cutting off each other. All right, so Vegas, ask the question straight out.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if there is no minimum wage, based on what we're saying, if there's no minimum wage, and you're saying someone can negotiate with another company, if you don't want to pay me this price, I'm going to go to another company. But what if people can come into the country and work for that price that the company is willing to offer? Are you going to put a stoppage to that to say you cannot work for that price that the Jamaican people are refusing choosing to work for. That is what I'm trying to understand.
Right. And I'm trying to tell you that now you're talking about immigration. So the answer is any company who wants to bring in workers from outside, they have to make a case for bringing in those workers from outside. We're not going to set the price. They have to make a case. So let's say they need an engineer in aerospace technology, and we have no engineers here in Jamaica. You know, they've put out an ad, they've advertised for the position, and nobody in Jamaica has applied for the aerospace position. And so they said, based on these results, we're applying to be able to bring in an aerospace person. All we'll be doing is authorizing the immigration aspect of this, right? Not setting the price of it. Now, if you go down to a minimum wage job now, you're now saying the person is putting out a minimum wage job. We're looking for people to flip burger. They put an ad out and 1,000 person applies. And then they come to us and say they can't find anybody. They have 1,000 applications, but they can't find anybody. There'll be really no justification for the government to approve an immigration visa for somebody to come in for a job that 1,000 Jamaicans have applied for, unless they can show with irrefutable proof that these 1,000 persons, even though they apply, they really can't flip a burger.
Can I speak? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
but I'm finished. Yeah, I've answered. Yeah.
I really want to move on from this topic, but I think it is this part of the manifesto. But I think it is very important for us to understand what's going on here. If you look at what is going on with even in America, with people crossing the border, and we hear it all the time, the work that people are not willing to do, or the price that people are not willing to accept. People are coming into the country through immigration and accepting these prices, and of such, you know, there's arguments that there's an increase in unemployment. So a small country like Jamaica, with 2.5 to 3 million people, if foreigners are coming in and willing to work for what we're not willing to work for, wouldn't that increase unemployment? That's what I need to get a yes or a no from, basically.
No, but you're asking. You see, you're not asking the question correctly. You're now comparing us to America, where they have a large border with Mexico, which is unsecured, and people.
I'm just giving you an analogy.
Yeah, no, so Jamaica doesn't have that problem. We don't have a problem where people are crossing our border without us being able to manage that. So if somebody wants to come into Jamaica to work, they have to apply, and if they're going to apply, it has to be based on a need. And if that need is there, then it will be approved. If that need is not there, it will not be approved. So I think that answers the question. You're now trying to deal with a price issue. We're saying we're not going to be setting prices. We're not going to set the price that if you employ this person from outside Jamaica, here's the price you need to pay them. No, we're not going to do that. What we're doing is saying, show us proof that you cannot find a Jamaican available to do this job. And that should be very easy. You put out an ad, we see how many persons apply for it, you show the qualification, and you show us the evidence of the interviews to say they're not qualified or competent to flip the burger. And so these people that are lower than minimum wage, we're going to import them, which of course would be ridiculous. But I'm just saying that's the nature of the game. That's how we're going to be dealing with it.
Let's look at economic liberty, so we can piggyback off that.
Yes.
Uniters want all members of society to have abundant opportunities to achieve economic success. A free and competitive market allocates resources in the most efficient manner. Each person has the right to offer goods and services to others in the free market. The only proper role of the government in economic realm is to protect property rights and educate disputes. Is not what and provide a legal framework which voluntary trade is protected. All efforts by the government to redistribute wealth or to control or manage trade are improper in a free society. If this is what will be implemented, wouldn't the merchants be able to flood the market with imported cheap products in a free market?
Okay, so you kind of jumped there a bit from what you were reading to merchants flooding the market with
no, I'm asking.
Right. Well, no, merchants will not be able to just flood the local market with cheap products. But let's step back a second. Let's say merchants are free to flood the market with cheap products. What does that mean? What does it really mean? It means that Jamaicans are buying products at a price that is cheaper than they otherwise would get it for. Why would you have a problem with, if they want that product, if that product is wanted by the Jamaican people, they want to buy it, why would you be opposed to them being able to get it for a cheaper price? Why would you want them to pay a higher price for it?
So you're saying if anyone can decide what they sell for in the market?
Of course. I mean,
so everyone can decide the price that they price on their goods.
Yeah, in a free society, yes, which is what we want. We want a free society. So you, Mr. Vegas, is free to charge whatever you want for the products you produce and want to sell, or you buy and want to sell. And I am free to buy and sell the product I want to sell. All of us, all 2.9 million of us, would be free to offer our services or sell our products at the price that we think best, provided somebody else wants to buy it, and we can't use force or fraud to get them to buy it.
So you wouldn't care if someone imports goods into the country and is selling it cheaper than the farmers in Jamaica?
Absolutely not. We're not opposed to somebody importing anything into Jamaica that is not going to kill somebody. So it's not, what we're going to do as a government is to create an environment that will now allow our farmers to be competitive. We're going to create an environment that allows our entertainers to be competitive. We're going to create an environment that allows all the different sectors to be competitive. Right now, we have an environment which doesn't do that. It makes it hard for Jamaicans to produce and easy for them to import.
So you're saying, so the farmers in Jamaica and the products that are made in Jamaica that may cost more to make or more to plant these products, is not an issue if someone or the merchants are importing cheaper goods into the country and competing with the farmers and the persons who are creating products in Jamaica?
Your premise is wrong, sir. Are you saying that Jamaica has to produce things at a higher cost than other people?
I know for a fact that the farmers, it takes more resources to harvest or to plant some of these crops in Jamaica than what can be imported into the country.
So our goal should be to ensure we have an environment where Jamaica has a competitive advantage in something. We're not going to have a competitive advantage in everything. So we're not going to be able to produce everything at a competitive price. So what you want is an environment that allows Jamaicans to find their competitive space and to succeed in those spaces. So the reason why countries should import normally, you import because somebody else is better able to produce this than you. And then you export to them what you're better able to produce than them. So for example, Jamaica could be a grand tourist, just for example, a grand tourist destination because of what we have to offer. So we export this product by having tourists come here and buy this product because we're better at it, we're good at it, or entertainment or whatever, while we need to buy phones because we don't produce it and we have not figured out how to do that effectively. Now, what you're trying to set up is a moral argument that suggests that government is supposed to make sure that even though we're not competitive in a particular product line, that government should block the Jamaican people from accessing that product line at a cheaper price in order to protect the local industry. We don't buy into that. What we buy into is empowering the Jamaican people to produce competitively in the spaces that they can produce competitively, and then do so. And you import what you can't produce competitively. We don't want to set up a tug of war between import export. We want to set up a dynamic environment that allows us to export more than or as much as we import, so that we have a good balance of trade.
Are you cognizant of what happened in Haiti with the rice farming?
Yes.
But wouldn't this be a similar situation?
No. Again, Haiti has not implemented a system like what the UIC is talking about. So if you want good results from your people, you have to enable your people. So the UIC, for example, instead of doing what you're proposing, we're going to invest in our human capital so that we have a very bright Jamaica, a very competent Jamaica, a very effective citizenry, as opposed to just playing around with protective means, which in the end simply result in us locking in inefficiency and never achieving their full potential. I don't want that, and nobody should want that if they understand economics. So what we're going to do is to make sure that the children of Jamaica are properly nourished, properly educated, properly housed, and as a result of that, become very effective and highly productive and efficient contributors to the Jamaican economy.
All right, let's move on from there a little bit. Crime is one of the major things that I think is being talked about presently in Jamaica. I see where you're saying we, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and uphold. Let me go a little bit further up. Excuse me. So, statements of principles. We, the members of the United Independent Congress, hereby challenge the moral authority of the omnipotent state and defend the inherent rights of every individual to be free. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal rights of others to live in whatever manner they choose. Government throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. All political parties, except for the UIC, grant to government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without consent. Would this be something that the gang members and people who are partaking in illegal activities, wouldn't this be something that they welcome?
Absolutely not. How would they welcome it? We're saying that the government of Jamaica must respect the sovereignty of the individual. We're not saying that the government of Jamaica should protect criminals. A criminal is somebody who is trying to violate the sovereignty of another person by either taking their life or taking away their freedom or taking away their property. And the UIC system, if you read down further, makes it very clear that we protect the sovereignty of every citizen. And so the purpose of government is to make sure we have a very effective police service that will protect that sovereignty, protect your life, your liberty, your property. We want a government that provides a safe environment, a clean environment, an orderly environment with the proper public infrastructure that we can do our best, and we can do that feeling secure. So no criminal will like the system.
So how would you stop criminals or people who are partaking in illegal activities from benefiting from their proceeds if the state has the right to this? Government throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals without the fruit of their labor. You're saying basically individuals have the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. So how would you know, how would you stop criminals from partaking in the benefits?
Okay, it's a so let's go up here. So what you have just read a while ago is talking about the relationship between government and a law-abiding citizen. And now you want to talk about the relationship between the government and a citizen who wants to use force and fraud to deny others their rights. The role of government is to have a police service that apprehends and convict such persons and have them pay the price for wanting to violate the rights of others. That does not conflict with having the government respecting those citizens who want to enjoy the fruits of their labor. The problem you're having is that the current system of governance doesn't operate under the rule of law, which should be objective. It operates under the rule of whenever you elect a new government, they can kind of do whatever they kind of want and make up new rules and new laws and apply them as they see fit whenever. We say no to that. We want a standard set of rules, call it the rule of law, which are objective, that makes it very clear that the government doesn't own you. The government doesn't have the right to tax you at will. There will be limits, the hard limit on taxation. The government doesn't have the right to just regulate away your life. So, okay, today I feel like we say nobody should have sugar, nobody should salt. No, those are your personal choices. The government is there to protect your life from criminals, people want to murder you, from those who want to enslave you. If anybody wants to force you into slavery, or anybody who wants to steal your property, whether that property is is money or other physical assets, or even steal your body, so to speak. So I think because of the way we have been trained, when we hear certain things, it sounds strange to us because we're used to a colonial model of governance where it's almost as if we are slaves and the government is the master and they can do with us as they please for the most part. The UIC says no, that has to stop. We must put solid boundaries between government and the individual. Crooks, on the other hand, those who want to use force, that's violence, right? Or those who want to use fraud, deception, for example, misleading advertisement, that's where the government gets in. We make sure that anybody who tries to use force or fraud to get their way in society, those are who the government goes after. Those who want to just enjoy a peaceful life, leave them alone. Let them enjoy themselves, enjoy the fruits of their labor.
We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and to hold what, where government exists, they must not violate the rights of any individual, namely the right to life. Accordingly, we support the prohibition of the initiation of physical force against others. Can you expound a little bit on this? Are you saying the government will not be initiating any physical force against others, meaning the citizens, people who are suspected of, or the government are trying to take control of situations?
No. So the word that you need to focus on is initiate. So there are two types of force. There is force where you are defending yourself, or in the case of the state is defending an innocent citizen. So the police has the right to respond to situations where a person is being threatened or a person is being attacked. So the state use retaliatory force. The state must not initiate force, meaning you, the citizen, you're not doing anything. You're not violating the law that says you cannot use force or fraud to get your way with the citizens. So you're not doing that. A state now comes and initiate force, right? Such as you're peacefully demonstrating and the state comes and lock you up because they're like, no, we don't want you to be able to demonstrate unless you come and get a permit from us. That is wrong. But in terms of retaliatory force, meaning gangs who are trying to terrorize people, or somebody who is trying to beat up his wife, or whatever it is, the state now, that's where you only have the right to use force when you are retaliating. You're stopping somebody else from using unlawful force against somebody else. So the word is initiate. No one, not even the government, should be allowed to initiate force. For example, let's say you don't like me. You don't have the right to initiate force, come and punch me. That would be initiating force. If you try to punch me, I would have the right by law to retaliate and make sure I defend myself and punch you first or shoot you first, for example, to defend myself. But I wouldn't have the right to come and initiate force against you. You don't have the right to initiate force against me, nor does the government has the right to initiate force against anyone. It only has the right or responsibility to retaliate against someone who is trying to use force, threatening to use force against somebody else to protect your right to your life, your liberty, or your property. So we're really putting the government in its rightful place and stop allowing it this excessive power to do things to citizens which it should never be able to do.
So you mentioned someone demonstrating. So what if it's a situation of the government has to mandate certain rules or protocols in terms of a disaster risk management situation? Are you saying people who are demonstrating, like, for example, what happened in your situation, are you saying people who are disobedient during that time, there should be no force used to disperse people from going against that order?
So first of all, they wouldn't be disobedient because we're not required to obey the government if they're doing something wrong. So the government, in the case of a natural disaster or a medical emergency, it still doesn't have the right to initiate force. It has the right to educate, and it has the right to inform, and it has the right to propose and suggest. Okay, and then the person's now within their own right, as long as the citizen is not initiating force. So let's say you have demonstrators, and those demonstrators are destroying public property, threatening the lives of others. They're going to fight with people. Then the government has a right to step in to stop them violating the rights of somebody else. But if they're simply going to be demonstrating to call attention to a national issue, to say this is wrong. So for example, suppose the so-called emergency that the government is trying to tell us about is a fake emergency. Let's say it's a fake emergency. Other citizens are aware that it's a fake emergency. Some are not aware, and some want to call attention to the fakeness of it and say, listen, we're going to hold up placards and tell the world that we know that this is a fake emergency. The government must not have the right to suppress those persons, but intervene if those persons use that opportunity to violate the life, the liberty, or property rights of any other citizen.
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any.
So you're saying, if you were prime minister now, and you implemented a disaster risk management act, and people decide that they want to go out there and demonstrate against you, having lockdowns or whatever the situation, the protocols based on the health minister recommendation or the health ministry recommendation, you're saying people are demonstrating and going out against the protocols, there would be no force used against them towards such movements?
Absolutely, and there are two parts to it. One, if what you just said is the case, where not me or anybody who does that, based on the new Jamaica, that prime minister and that government would have broken the law. So you can't do that. You cannot implement any protocol that takes away freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association, freedom of choice. So anything that the government does that takes away your freedoms would be considered unconstitutional. The government can only impose laws that respects the sovereignty of the citizen and prevents any citizen from using force or fraud against another citizen, and itself the government is not permitted to use force or fraud against the citizens. So if the citizens see the government using initiated force, not retaliatory force, but initiative force or fraud, they have a right actually to rise up against the government because they would have known that the government has violated the Constitution. The purpose of a properly written Constitution is to protect the people from their government, not to protect the government from the people.
What do you understand from the Disaster Risk Management Act? What do you understand?
When you say what I understand, what do you mean?
Yeah, what is it for? What is it for? Do you think it is something that Andrew Holness just came up with, or is something that the House voted on?
No, it doesn't matter if the House votes on a law. For example, if the House vote on slavery and say we should enslave everybody that is my height and my color and my DNA, that doesn't make it right. It simply means that a group of people have made a law which is unjust and wrong. So a law in and of itself doesn't make it just. So the DRMA is a bad law, whether it was passed by Andrew Holness or by the PNP before him, or by both of them coming together and doing it. Any law in the Jamaica that we want to create that violates the fundamental rights of Jamaicans must and will be wrong.
So you have no problem in managing the disaster if there should be a disaster in your administration?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, managing a disaster doesn't mean you have to be a dictator. So if the UIC was in government when we have this medical emergency, the UIC approach would have been very different. We would have called together a council, a public emergency council, including the leaders of all the other political parties, recognizing that in the case of an emergency, a real emergency, national emergency, it must not be political. So you have to get rid of any appearance of political by making sure you have all the people at the table. Right. Then you give them the information so they have transparency. Then you take an objective approach to finding out what is really happening and what are the proposed solutions. and then you make sure that those proposed solutions do not violate the rights and freedoms of the people. Then you proceed now, educate the people and provide public support so that the people can take the measures necessary that you would have identified for them and help them to understand to then protect their lives and their livelihoods, but not having a dictatorship in place. That's not what you need.
But Mr. Patterson, if there is an outbreak under your watch and you are putting protocols in place and people are going against the protocols you put in place and decide that they're going to, case in point, let's say what's going on now, whether you believe that COVID is real, yes or no. But let's say there's a mask mandate and people decide that they do not want to wear masks. Are you saying there should be no force or no laws put in place to stop such behavior?
No, I'm saying there should not be a mask mandate. There should be, if the government using an objective, transparent, and inclusive process, meaning not a political one, an inclusive process, if they determine that, you know what, the best recommendation is that you wear a mask, that you wash your hands, you stand 6 feet apart, and so on and so forth. You recommend that to the people and you give justification for it, and the people will choose whether or not they wish to comply with that, because
So
that is a, hold on, that is a law about their personal, it's not a law, that is an issue about their personal choices. The laws must be around any one of those persons using force or fraud against somebody else. So for example, if I know I have a communicable disease, I know, we're not guessing now, I know, and I come over and knowingly transfer that communicable disease to you, then I have broken a law. But to tell me that I must now, you're going to lock me up if you tell me how I can take care of my health, and I choose not to do it because you're saying the way I take care of my health might affect somebody else's health, even though you have no proof that I've done anything contrary to that, but you're now going to criminalize me prior, then you have broken the basic fundamental laws of individual sovereignty, and a UIC government would never tolerate that.
All right. So let's speak on it from a different angle then. Let's say like what the government is doing now with Zozo, and you're saying people, there's a curfew, and people decide that, oh, I have my constitutional right, I'm not adhering to what the government implemented in this mission or whatever to stop crime or reduce crime. You're saying people should just do whatever.
No, I'm not saying people should do whatever. I'm saying the government has no right to implement a curfew. The government has no right to take away your right to freedom of movement on any pretext. It doesn't have any right to do. It has a right to tell you that right now there's a hotspot in Tivoli or in Savlamar or in Santa Cruz. We have an upturn in murders or rapes or whatever, and it informs you about the situation, tells you what it is doing about the situation, but it has no right to stop you from traveling.
Even if it's in the best interest of national security?
No, hold on. When you say in the best interest of national security, what do you mean? Who decides what's in the best interest of national security? 63 men and women that happen to be elected, they say that the best interest of national security is to take away the rights of a subset of people, for example, to say we're going to violate the rights of this subset because we think it is in the best interest of society. Absolutely not. That is why you need to read our manifesto carefully, because what it does is put a check on government. The government's role is to protect your sovereignty and our collective sovereignty. So if there's people coming to invade our country, it has an army that it says we're going to fight the enemies coming in. Within the country, if there's a person, any one of us who wants to use force or fraud to take what belongs to somebody else, be it their life, their freedom, or their property, the government steps in and crushes that and say, no, you can't do that. But it does not give the government the right to say, we have observed a potential problem, and to solve that problem, we need to take away your rights to do that. Absolutely not.
So you're against Zozo?
No. Well, if you define Zozo as the government going in and doing remedial actions for wrongs that it had committed against the people. So over the last 78 years, they have created garrison communities, and they have funded gangs, and they have given contracts to dons and so on to win elections, and now they've messed up the society, and now they have to go in and try to do remedial actions. Then of course they have to do remedial actions. The UIC, for example, has a remedial action plan. We have designated 10% of the GCT to make sure that we get rid of the garrison, get rid of the ghettos, and get rid of the squatter communities, and move Jamaicans into becoming what they should have been long ago. From 1838, they should have gotten access to their land, to own their lands, and to build their lives. We're not going to remediate that because that wasn't done. So if Zozo is about remediating that, it is good. If it is what it really is turning out to be, which is a little band-aid which will not really fix the problem, then of course we won't support that.
You mentioned the right to our land, the right to property. Accordingly, we oppose all government interference with private property, such as confiscation, nationalization, and eminent domain, and support the prohibition of robbery, fraud, misrepresentation. When you say private property and the government cannot interfere or confiscate any land, what if there is a need to for example, to build a road somewhere? The government has no right to that property?
No, it doesn't. So what you just mentioned is a powerful statement, but let me answer the small piece that you have raised. So what you have raised is the issue: can the government see my land and say, me want to build a road from A to B and your land in another way? Me go and just come take your land and build my road through it? The answer is no. The government has no superior power than any other citizen. It has to come to me and it has to offer to buy my land, and I have to decide if I want to agree to sell my land and at what price I want to sell my land. The government should have no superior power to the citizens except to protect the rights of citizens. It cannot violate the rights of citizens. It can only protect the right. My land is my property. I am the only one who have domain over that property. And so if you want my land to build a road, a daycare center, a school, a hospital, a bridge, you must get my permission, and you can't use force or fraud to get it. You have to come to me like anybody else would want to buy my land, and we in the open market decide on whether or not I want to sell my land to you. If I say no, you have to go away.
So
All right, guys. So very good interview. I've been watching some of the comments. Mr. Patterson is a very learned person, you know, very hard. You can see that Mr. Vegas was trying to corner him in some of the questions, but the reality of the situation is that the UIC is here to provide that level of freedom that the Jamaican citizens are due and have never been given. And so we are here to make sure that everyone everyone's rights are duly recognized and protected by the government. And of course, the Constitution is there to protect the people from the government. So it's, as I said, it was a long interview, 3 hours long. So we may be playing the rest of that interview in another live. But drop in the comments if you found the interview or in this interview interesting, and if you would like to see part 2 of this interview. I think it's really timely, even though it was done last year. I think it's still very timely. And why I like it is because really Vegas goes through all the points in the manifesto and asks questions based on each point. Now, some of the questions may not be valid, but it's good that we get to see Mr. Patterson explaining the manifesto and kind of expounding on the thought behind the points in the manifesto. So it's an hour and 25 minutes. I really wanted to stop at an hour and 15. And so if you guys have any comments, questions, Don Allen says the questions were relevant by Mr. Vegas. I think most of them were. I think there were some questions that Mr. Patterson had already answered, and he re-asked the question in a different way. But I mean, it's always good to get clarity. It's always good to fully understand what the person is saying. So we can't fault him for that. If you don't understand, he's going to ask the question so he can understand what is being said. So, and that's within his right to do so. So, yeah. So, comments, questions. He needs a debate with the opposition. Yes, we would love a debate with the opposition, but Mr. Info, opposition is not going to want to debate Mr. Patterson. A lot of you may not know this, but, or some of you may know this, but the both political parties don't really want to recognize the UIC. The UIC, if you look at the Constitution and how the Constitution is set up, the Constitution is set up for 2 parties. It's not set up for 3 parties. It's not set up for 5 parties. It's set up for 2 parties. And so to bring a 3rd party in the mix is kind of going to bring some, you know, some uneasiness, sorry. Don Allen says, the manifesto as a result of the questions and answer gave flesh to it. Yes, I'm not understanding the question, but as a result, the questions and answers gave flesh to the manifesto. Okay, yes, definitely. And I would encourage you guys to go and read the manifesto on our website, www.uicjamaica.com. You can also go on the website and sign up to donate or to become a volunteer. And you don't have to live in Jamaica to volunteer. You can actually, you know, be anywhere in the world and volunteer for the UIC. And of course, you can be anywhere in the world and donate to the UIC. So while you're reading the manifesto, you can donate and sign up to be a volunteer. Also very important, very, very important. I can't close this live without saying this. September 22nd, we're going to have a walk for good governance, and we'll be leaving from downtown Kingston. Now, so those of you that are here in Jamaica, please come out and show us your support. We'll be also working with various civil organizations as well. And so come out and show your support for good governance now. And Mr. Patterson, at the end of the walk, is going to unveil some interesting things. That's all I can say right now. But we'll be walking from downtown Kingston, Ward Theatre, to Hero Circle, stopping at Hero Circle for maybe 10-15 minutes. And then from Hero Circle to Emancipation Park, stopping there for another 10-15 minutes. And from Emancipation Park to Halfway Tree, Nelson Mandela Park, sorry. And that's where we'll end, and that's where we'll culminate. And so that will be September 22. It's an anniversary to our walk that we had last year, which Mr. Patterson led from Ward Theatre again to Gordon House in protest of, you know, the mandatory joke. So, or against the mandatory joke. So this is, you know, we're coming full circle 1 year, and we're still having bad governance. And so we're saying enough is enough. And we would like to have good governance now. So remember, September 22nd, as I said, if you're here, please do come out. We'll be leaving Ward Theatre at around 10 in the morning. Don't quote me on that. And around 9, 10 in the morning, somewhere there. But get in contact, like go to the website, sign up, and then you'll be able to get notifications on what's happening with the walk. Thanks for coming on the live, guys. Please remember to like, share, and understand. I mean, like, share, and subscribe. I'm sorry, I was reading Mr. Patterson's message here. Vegas was trying to understand and helped many by his questions to understand. Definitely, definitely. JMH says in the next election, put your X beside the handshake. Definitely. And so we encourage you to go out and share the UIC, talk to as many people as you know about the UIC, and get involved with the UIC, you know, whether it's through volunteering or donating. Mr. Patterson says here, I really enjoyed this interview because it helped many to understand our vision, mission, and values better. That is true. It really gave the UIC the platform to say, this is what we're proposing. This is what we stand by. And you know, it's one thing to read something on the internet or on a piece of paper. It's another thing to hear it explained and expounded on, and you know, make more sense for you so that you can connect the dots for yourself and say, oh, all right, that makes sense, or no, that don't make sense. You know, so you know, this interview was a really good interview, and that's one of the reasons I actually like this interview, even though it was long. Yes, the Walk for Good Governance now on September 22nd will be live streamed. Yes, I'm sorry I did not say that. It will be live streamed, guys, for those of you in the diaspora. It will be live streamed, and the whole day. So, you know, be ready. But yes, so it's a big day for us, and we think it's you know, one of the catalysts for us. You know, September 22 last year was a catalyst for us as well, and we think this will be even bigger for us as well. So thanks for coming on, guys, and please enjoy the rest of your evening. As again, remember, please to like and share and subscribe and donate to the UIC. All right. Good evening and good night.